Welcome to the Warrior Razor podcast with my mom, Angela Johnson. My name is Elliot, and on today's episode, my mom talks to her good friend Erica Fouss. I hope you enjoy their conversation.
Good morning, warriors. Time to start your day. Keep your head up, marching on. Don't let nothing stand in your way. Don't let nobody tear you down. You got to proudly wear your crown. 'Cause you're a warrior, warrior.
Welcome to the Warrior Razor podcast. I'm your host, Angela Johnson, and I have my friend Erica Fouss with me in the studio today. Erica and I have been friends for a while, and we have a funny story about how we met, actually. I had just moved into our neighborhood, and I was out walking Elliot because he was brand new. And why don't you tell your side of the story? It's
So
funny.
we had neighbors move in across the street, and I knew they were Christians because there was lots of cars helping them move. Because Christians have their friends help them move, and then you give them pizza. That's how it works.
Right.
So no moving trucks. And then I saw them, we had waved to the neighbors, and then I saw them leave. And then a little bit later, there's this like lovely young couple pushing a baby in a stroller, and they're going and knocking at the door, I believe with toilet paper. And
I forget that part.
We had rolls of toilet paper. And me being the nosy neighbor that I am, I was like, oh, I think that they left to return the truck. My name's Erica. Nice to meet you. And so then we were chatting. And so then that was then. And then a bit later, I met you walking with a friend at the neighbor's house.
Yep.
And we realized that we went to the same college.
Well, back it up a minute because you introduced your kids to me, and it's Levi, Ezra, and Miriam. And I thought either they're very Jewish or there is a strong biblical tie in here, and she just didn't realize that she named her kids biblical names.
Very intentional biblical names.
So that was also part of the conversation.
Right. So then we met you at the neighbors, realized that we went to the same college. You knew my husband before we were married.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know you in college. And then later on, I was like, I think I'm supposed to be friends with her. And I think I'm supposed to, invite her to Bible study and my mom's group and all this kind of stuff. And so then I audited her website at her. And
you Googled our home address on the auditor to find where we live.
Right. So then I would take my children and we would go on walks past your house and maybe she'll be out, this random person. And so that was a bit. I mean, I think it was from August and then December.
Yes.
I was just coming back from my last women's Bible study of the season before after we broke for Christmas, and she was there, and I ran out of my garage and I was like, hi, it's nice to see you again. I was like, I think I'm supposed to be friends with you, and you're supposed to come to my Bible study and my mom's group. And
I remember just thinking oh, okay. And we had met before, and we had a conversation before, and I remember you were ending one season, and for some reason at the time you didn't work out.
It was a break, yeah.
You were in a break, but I thought, you know what, Lord, thank you. I've been wanting friends. I've been needing connection, and you had no idea that I was feeling like on an island and mothering, and the Lord just put me on your heart.
Right.
And it's really funny because, well, not funny, it's divine, because Erica, that seed, that invitation, through that, she invited me to Bible study, and that time with those women, 7 years that I was a part of it. You've been a part of it for much longer. But it enriched my faith. We grew together. We grew in the Word. We grew just in so many ways, mothering, wifing, all of those things. And then there was an invitation to join MOPS. And so therein set the tone and the path for me to start in terms of leadership. And you were doing your own stuff with leadership. So it's just really neat to see that when God calls you to do something and put something in your heart, don't ignore it, because you never know the impact that could have on a person's life.
And where God is going to use that one thing, how he's going to, start the ball rolling.
And it was really a simple invitation, a friendly, genuine invitation. And Erica has just had such a significant role in my journey with the Lord and my walk and where I am, even with Warrior Razor, because out of that very Bible study, our mutual good friend Lisa was the one that coined that phrase. I homeschool, but more than that, I'm raising warriors. And in that moment, that's when God planted the seed of the ministry in my mind, way back when I didn't even know it was a seed.
Right.
So here she is today, and here we're having a conversation today. So, Erica, you have 3 children. Mm-hmm. Anything else about yourself that you want the listeners, viewers to know about you? Kind of like your elevator speech. I always ask everybody that.
So I've been a stay-at-home mom since my oldest was born. He's 14, almost 14 and a half, going into high school next year, which is crazy. His name's Levi, and then Ezra is 12, and Miriam is 10. I was an engineer, pre-children, civil engineer, and did construction management. And now I just manage children. And I do a lot of volunteering in the community, at church, and my kids' school. So I keep myself pretty busy. And
everyone needs an Erica in their life, just let me tell you, because when we were looking into preschools in the neighborhood, she said, "Oh, I have a spreadsheet for you." And I said, "Of course you do. Of course you have a spreadsheet," because, God placed these gifts and talents and qualities within her. Yes, she's an engineer by training, but that embodies the way you think.
Right.
You do have this kind of compartmentalized and meticulous way of viewing the world around you. But she sent me a spreadsheet with all the preschools in the area. And this is to your credit. This isn't like a weird thing, guys. Like, this is an amazing thing, because I did not have the brain capacity to even do that. So she sent me the spreadsheet. I looked down every school within mileage from the house, at the time, the gas price and the distance. And so what it would cost beyond tuition, beyond having them in school. And I thought, thank you, Erica. You've done all the hard work for me. And we're going to pick that one.
Which is the same one that my kids were landed at. And I've been able to, I pass that to other people too.
You do.
Yeah.
So everyone needs an Erica, is what I say. Okay, so let's talk about mothering, because, you did have this career beforehand. Civil engineer is not a slack career by any means. So when you transition to full-time parenting, and it is a full-time career, what's one thing that you would tell yourself, your early mom self, today, now knowing the hindsight that you have? What would you reach back into the halls and say, Erica, what would you tell yourself?
I think I struggled a lot at the beginning with my self-identity and self-worth, and like, well, I'm a civil engineer and I've done all these things, but now I'm just changing diapers. Yeah. But I think I would say, let go of that. I mean, yes, that is who I am, and that's how I think, but what I'm doing is also very, very valuable in the home. And I'm just not as talented as many women who are able to do it at work and at home. That's not me.
It's not the way God has called you in this season.
So yeah. And then also maybe to say, there are these other opportunities that God has presented, that He will present to you, and you will get to use those leadership skills and talents, and all, how my brain is, special, where all our brains are special, how that works for other things, and may not get a paycheck, but it may at some day. But
you coordinated mobs. You were in leadership for many years within your home church, and you had your hands on a lot, and you did a lot of it very well. And so the Lord will use. I talked about that on the podcast too. He's given us this DNA, and just because you become a mom doesn't mean that you have to stop doing the things that make you who you are. And you were able to use those for the kingdom in different ways, whether you're home, working, whatever. Okay, so let's just hit it right out of the gate. What's one of your biggest motherhood struggles that you feel you can kind of earmark that there? That's that sticky wicket right there. Yeah.
So, I said I've got 3 kids, and when she was about 2, she began to have signs of trichotillomania, which is a hair pulling disorder. And it's a unique thing, but in itself, it was how God used it for me. I can't fix it. It's not my thing. And I, as a type A, oldest child, engineer mindset, there's the problem, and here's how we're going to attack it. Yeah. And it was a 4-year journey that we went on, and there were times when there was a particular doctor that I wanted her to see, but insurance wouldn't approve that particular doctor. And so I spent hours and hours writing letters and, just like making phone calls. And it was challenging, very challenging in that time. But through all that, and God putting different people into my life, and Facebook groups of, support groups of parents, that was really helpful. And like I said, so much prayer, because I had shared on our Facebook page kind of the journey throughout the process. And so hundreds of people were praying.
Bible study,
Facebook. Yeah. And there was a family at our old church who I think even still the husband in that relationship prays daily for her.
Does he really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So it's just, and the testimony that God is in control and I can't fix it, but His timing is perfect. Luckily it stopped when she was about 6. We did some stuff, and it's been,
Yeah. And it was a season for you. I remember there would be times that we met weekly for, Bible study, set amount of time. And you would come back and you'd just be like, girls, I'm tired today. I had to stay up all night with Mary so she wouldn't be pulling her hair. And I mean, they were long nights in her bed. I mean, you were in the trenches for that season. So the fact that God, so sometimes we got to learn these lessons, and it's through our kids sometimes, and it's yeah, you're like, oh, really, Lord, why? But they teach us these things, like Nora and her vitiligo. You know, I look at her and I was trying to pray it away, and in a moment of prayer, she's like, and God, even if you don't, I'm okay. And I zinger to my heart, I learned the lesson that this is not mine to fix. Like, Lord, Mary's hair pulling, that wasn't yours to fix, but yours to pray through and pray over. So God, I mean, he's gracious in the lessons that we learn, and sometimes they're not fun, but at the other end of it, there is a story to tell. And now any mom that you know that's going through something like that.
I've been able to share resources and, you know, her story and the pattern, you know, what worked for us, which, you know, with all things with kiddos, works for my kid, but might not work for your kid. But like, you know, here's what we tried.
Yeah. And it's not a one size fits all, but again, I love that verse about the God of all comfort will comfort us so that when we turn it around and we can comfort somebody else. So in terms of resources and things that you like to pass on, because you are a wealth of knowledge, you do read a lot, you are ingesting a lot of content, you do have the time now where you can afford to be a student of the word. So what are you listening to? What are things that you're filling your day-to-day with? What's a day in the life of Erica Fouss when you're sitting down having your time with the Lord? What does that look like? And I talk about this on the show pointedly because I know a lot of moms are in a season where they're like, I don't know what to do. And not that your formula will be the best formula for them, because God will give us the space that we need to do what we need to do. But it's good to see examples and hear from other moms that are in the trenches right now. So what's a day in the life of Erica, and what are you listening to?
So I get up early in the morning, which I know many people do, but other people aren't. I'm in a season where I can. When my kids were young, I was not. So for me, I'm getting up and I keep a running prayer list on a note on my phone. And so I'm big into intercessory prayer. So I'm praying through that.
What does that mean, an intercessory prayer, for someone that may not know that term?
So that means that I'm praying for other people. I've heard, especially, through Bible studies, through prayer groups or different things that I'm a part of, I've heard, or even just on Facebook, hey, there's this need, this person is going through this. Most of them are people I don't know, but it's, people that my friends know these people, kind of a thing.
I love that. When you think about, when you get to heaven, you're never going to know who was praying for you, because there's people like Erica that are seemingly in the shadows, praying behind the scenes, but they are going before the throne and interceding or speaking or praying on behalf of people. And you're amazing at that. That it is a spiritual gift that you do have. And she, beyond praying, she will follow up. She will check in, because again, how do we target our prayer? How do we make our prayer purposeful if you don't know exactly how to be praying? So even with what's going on with my family situation, she's been instrumental in being able to pray for Luca and my family. So I do thank you for you walking out that gifting, because not everybody does, and you're being diligent to that call. So, okay, interrupted you there. What else? Yeah. What else would you say?
It's just, being in the word, and there's different, like you actually suggested, I saw in a Facebook group, the Mama Bear Apologetics. So I'm listening to that. So my kid, like I said, my kids are middle school, late elementary. So, the world is coming at us. So trying to train them up and be, are prepared.
It's heavy stuff. So speaking of that, because we are in this generation where your kids are in the public school system, you're involved, you're in PTO, you've led that. Where does your mind go in terms of parenting children in this, in this generation? Because it's tough. We're in the middle of it right now. So any thoughts, any advice, anything that you kind of hang your hat on?
I'm just trying to stay like a half a step ahead.
Yeah.
And trying to, like, they send emails, like what they're testing or on, or I'm like, hey, I had the conversation with Levy yesterday. What are you learning about evolution, and what are they teaching? And versus, kind of shared what we learned back in the 90s and how are they presenting it these days. And so I'm just trying to be aware, and there's so much room for improvement, I think, for all of us at this age. I'm just trying to not be a helicopter mom, but also I just want to have a little finger on.
Yeah, you need to have a pulse. We need to know what's going on. We need to know. And because you are involved in the school system, you volunteer there, I think you're able to have a good pulse on that. So I think that there's something to be said for that. You teach me a lot about that too, all the time. Early on in schools, I'm like, when the kids went to school, I again, everyone needs an Erica. Like, what do I need to do for this kindergarten registration?
Right.
So, but to that point, it's very, very necessary and vital to your individual walk to find a mentor. It doesn't have to be someone that's like 30 years older than you. It could be someone that's a peer that's just maybe a little bit further in the journey. And Erica has been that to me, whether she recognizes or realizes that or not, but she's been a spiritual sister to me and a mentor in a lot of ways for that purpose alone. So thank you again for that.
You just need someone who's one step ahead.
Yeah, that's right.
Really.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to ask too. She was bold enough to ask me and invite me, and then sometimes I have to get out of my own way and let my pride die and be like, I don't know how to do this. What did you do? Or what do you have any advice? And that we find in the Bible study group too, or the community group that we're a part of, like we do it together. We mother together, and so we are able to shed some light on other situations, so you don't have to do this journey alone.
Right.
Okay, so who would you say some of the most influential people in your life have been? Since you're an influencer to me, if that's that new term. Are you an influencer?
Right.
Who are your influencers?
So it's kind of what you were saying. It's my Bible study people. It's the women that I have done life with, and we would share prayer requests. And when you're spending half of your time doing prayer requests, you really get to know what's on their heart and what is burdening them. And so just watching them do life together, I said this to my husband and I wish I hadn't. Or I acted this way with my children. And, so it's all these things that you're kind of, take a nugget here, take a nugget there, do this. Oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. So you need the good influences just as much as the ones that make you go, So you're like, oh, don't do that one. So
let me ask you this. In this season of parenting, you got a high schooler and you've got elementary kiddos. What dreams are you, what's being birthed in you that you're able to really walk out, and how are you doing that? Because I talked about that on the show in terms of motherhood. Our dreams don't have to die. We don't have to sit on the sideline and wait until our kids graduate. So what are you doing right now in terms of ministry, or and let me just be clarify that term. Ministry doesn't have to be like I'm in charge of something. I mean, it could be simple. It could be, because again, those seeds, we never know the fruit that will come of those simple little seemingly insignificant seeds. So what are you doing right now to walk out the calling that God's placed on your life and fulfill dreams that He's given you?
At this point, I've never been like I'm seeing Angela's dream board or like very intentional. I'm not that person. I'm not a person who says, I want to do this in this many years. I'm a person who says, all right, God, when you want me to do something, you're going to throw it on my lap. And that's how He's done things. So it's just kind of like, all right, let's see, I'm very structured day to day, but from like a big picture thing, it's like, I'm just waiting for God.
Yeah.
So I think there's different ways to, people work on that.
And so how do you know when He's prompting you to do something? Where do you hear from Him, or the nudges that you get? Like that, for instance, the day that you ran out of your garage to go flag me down. How did you know that God was specifically telling you to step out in that season?
For that, it was, he placed on my heart, hey, I'm supposed to be friends with this girl and I'm supposed to pull her in. So that was like just waiting for, I had looked intentionally and then waited for that opportunity. And so a lot of times many times it's, I'm not looking for it, and literally He drops it in my lap. Like I used to watch little kids, friends and stuff when my children were small, and I didn't ever go looking, but it was like, hey, there was this need, and so I was like, okay, I can do that. So it's like, can I do this? Can I fill this, this need here? Can I help in this way? Now, that's something that I have struggled with is, many times for a while there, I was like, yes, I can do this and this and this and this. And then I was like, hold tight. And then honestly, COVID and the quarantine, all that kind of stuff kind of reset me, because it was like, okay, I don't have to do everything.
Right.
And
that's tough for someone that is wired like,
right. I want to be busy. I feel like awkward if I'm not busy, and feel like I don't have a purpose. Like, oh, I don't have 17 things today. So like, I'm a loser.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of that, COVID taught you a valuable lesson. Now we're coming a little bit out of that. And we had to have a meeting of friends to decide the availability of calendar space. And Eric was like, no, can't do that. Can't do. So how are you making sure that you don't go back to the place where you have to be doing all the time, saying yes to everything? What safeguards do you have in your life right now that kind of keep you from knowing your boundaries?
And so for me, the propensity that I have to over volunteer is stuff that I do. It's not necessarily family stuff. It's when the kids are at school, I can fill all this empty time. Whereas when the kids are home, and my schedule for the summer with the kids is fairly busy, that I don't, is just like, we're trying to be intentional at this point about getting involved in things. For the longest time, we're in a culture these days where every kid is in everything and all the travel, and that just hasn't, for financially, we weren't able to do that. And I didn't really want that to be our life.
Correct.
And we are now at a point where financially we've got a little bit more flexibility. So we can say, all right, what experiences do we want our kids to have, and to think back when they're adults, oh, I got to do this activity or this sport or this, whatever it happens to be. So we're trying to do things and think through, like, yes, we should do this, but no, we can't do that.
Intentionality. Yeah, where your time goes. And that, so I give all my interviewees a kind of a question and answer, and we don't always stick to the script. But to that point, I think that that's something that moms coming up now would need to hear. Like, you don't have to keep up with anybody else. You don't have to have your kid in every other sport. If you feel called to that, that's great. That's cool. But to know that it's okay to say no to things. And we read a book, Lisa Turker's Her Best Yes. And I think that was a great resource for us as moms and wives and women in general, to know that sometimes it's okay to say no. And when you say no, you give space for somebody else to say yes. Right. So you're not robbing yourself necessarily of an opportunity, but you might be giving it or blessing something else to someone in that season where they can step into it. Right. So to know your limit and to know when it's good to say yes or no. But I don't know if you are like me. I think we do have a lot of similarities in our personality, but to know that just because it's available or that there's a need, I don't always have to fill it. Yeah. And that doesn't define me. That doesn't give me, I don't get worth or value from that. I have that in and of itself because I'm a daughter of the King. So in terms of your volunteer schedule, do you think through those things when you're... I
do. And like I said, because of the reset that I've had, there are things that have come up and I'm like, I can't do that. And I don't feel guilty.
Good.
And I'm able to, because I used to be very, like, I would do all these volunteer things, and then I would be super, like, stressed and ticked off at my children because they weren't doing whatever, because, like, I need to hurry and make dinner because I spent all day at this volunteer thing. And so I had asked them at one point, like, what do you think about, I don't know, what do you think about mom? Or, and they had said, and I wrote this down on my phone, like, you to volunteer too much and you're too stressed out. So, because when we had an activity, I would, hurry up, and it was very tense. Whereas now, I mean, yes, I am doing some volunteer stuff, but those evenings when we have things, I'm trying to be really intentional about having my stuff under control and done. And so we can do the sports activity at 5:00 and, I'm not stressed about eating beforehand or getting all the stuff. And I'm just trying to be a little bit more chill. Now the kids are older, so they're able to,
they can help more.
They can help.
But I love how you asked your children. I think that's great. I think sometimes as moms, we try to do it all and we negate involving them in some of the decisions or empowering them to have a voice in the day-to-day family. Now, they're not making the decisions, but you're involving them on their thoughts. And I think that's awesome that you were like, what do you think about mom? And they gave you good, honest feedback.
And I didn't like jump to, defensiveness. It was like, okay.
Yeah, thanks. That's good. That's some really good advice. Pocket that one, folks. Pocket that one. Ask your kids what they think of what you're doing and spending your time. And take it with a grain of salt, too.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so how do you want your kiddos to remember you? How do you want them to see mom and the legacy that you are leaving?
I want them to remember me fondly. And I went through these questions with my husband last night with Andy, and I was like, well, I want them to remember me fondly, but I think they're actually going to remember me as a taskmaster. And so one of the other questions she said, like, what could you, if you were to do over, it would be have more fun and play with them more. And the house doesn't have to be perfect. It's okay if the dishes are on the counter or things aren't wiped down. If, I'm throwing the ball or I'm reading a book or I'm snuggling. And so that's been, I had to do some counseling to understand that one. So.
You were the friend that in the middle of a play date, I was cleaning up and you were like, what are you doing? And I'm like, what do you mean? Because it was bothering me to see the mess. And she's like, stop cleaning.
Well, that's interesting because I would be the one to clean.
But you had learned that lesson. You had to come through that lesson yourself to tell me, stop cleaning, Angela. They're just going to make a mess of it anyway. And so, I just shut the door on their rooms now. Right. And there's a balance, obviously. But yeah, that's good. That's good good advice just to say, have fun, get down on the floor, play more, because the dishes will, they're, it's never ending. It's the laundry's never ending. But the time that we have with them is finite.
And I make them, they help. They,
taskmaster.
They have chores that they have to do. And so they're 10 to 14. So they're helping. They're cleaning bathrooms. They're vacuuming and dusting their room. They're putting their laundry away. And every family does chores differently. And you work what works for you. I mean, don't get me wrong. No one's allowed to fold the clothes. So,
only Erica can
do that properly.
She's gonna work through that later too.
But it is helpful. So it is like, I can clean this part of the house, and I know that they're doing that part. And there's like, okay,
you're in a new season where you have them to be active participants in the family. Okay, so as we end here, what would you say raising warriors looks like to you?
So for me, that's raising up my kids to love Jesus, and I pray often that they will crave a relationship with him. That. So you don't just, yes, you love Jesus, but you can love Jesus and spend no time with him.
Yeah.
Ever since I started getting up in the morning, like, what's your favorite time of the day? Is that, 5:45, 6 a.m. chunk of time when it's just me and Jesus and my coffee. So craving that relationship. And because when you crave something, you're going to actively work to get it.
Need it, desire it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
Crave all their lives. And I know there's a lot of, kids and people that turn away and then come back.
Yeah.
And that's people's journey. But I'm praying that my kids will stay on that journey.
But they don't need to turn away and to have a coming back moment. Yeah, that's good. Anything else that you want to tell the viewers, listeners, that we didn't talk about today? Good stuff. Yeah, we covered a lot in a little bit of time here. So I am so grateful to have you on the show, and just to know that you were an instrumental part in this journey with me and this ministry. So everybody needs an Erica. Go get yourself an Erica.
And it's awesome to have an Angela and be like, all I did was invite her to Bible study, and look what she's doing.
So yeah, you never know the part that you're going to play in someone's life. So step out, be bold, listen for those nudges, listen for those still small prompts. But in order to know the voice, you have to spend the time with the Lord. So if you're not spending time with the Lord, you're not going to really know his voice clearly. So carve out the time, have that relationship with the Lord, and we are our models. We are models to our children. They are watching. They're going to catch more than they'll ever hear from us. They'll watch more than we'll ever actually say. So she is a phenomenal model in that, and she is raising warriors for the kingdom. So thanks for being with me today, Erica.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening. And to all of our fellow warrior raisers, aim your arrows well.